Okay. Yeah, we're good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Thursday night at 8 o'clock, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for the 42nd installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. My name is Greg Rapport. I'm the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that provides one-to-one mentors to youth who are in need for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to survive. This program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G, William Sanders, Ruben Rodriguez, and the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Doc G is on the big board tonight, along with Robin producing the show. It's so good to see you both. I'd like to tell you about some of the other great programs here on Hamilton Radio. You know, when people talk to me, they still refer to the Age Out Angels Radio Hour as a kind of a one-off podcast without realizing that this radio station has been around for about 21 years. It's so long, in fact, that Doc G needs a break. But people who are locked into conventional radio might not even know about this. See, Hamilton Radio broadcasts 100% from an internet platform. And of course, the internet is how more and more people receive their media these days, and the numbers are growing. But just like traditional radio and television, Hamilton Radio follows the model of having a regular lineup of shows every day. And the result is that their following is increasing all the time. So the only thing really different between traditional radio and Hamilton Radio is the delivery system. So I want to tell you a little bit about Sunday, because Sunday is worship day at Hamilton Radio, beginning at 2:30 p.m. with My God First, followed at 4 o'clock with Sunday Worship and Talk. In the evening, the tone shifts to a more urban voice with Man of the House at 6. The Matthews broadcast at 7:30, and we close out Sunday evenings with Freedom Truth Radio at 9:40. It's a power-packed lineup, and if you're like me and you like a little background sound while you work, I just leave it on because, frankly, the regular news is killing me. And the people on Hamilton Radio are on here talking about real issues. So when this program is over, if you're watching on Facebook, go to www.hamiltonradio.net and sign up. And if you sign up, you'll receive text alerts and things like that when shows are being broadcast. And you'll get links that just make it one simple click away to begin listening to the fine programming here at Hamilton Radio. My guest in the studio tonight is Adrienne Rubin, and Adrienne is the chairperson of the nonprofit committee of the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce. When you think about chambers of commerce, you usually think only of for-profit enterprises, and I think your eyes are going to be opened wide with surprise tonight when you hear what Ms. Rubin is doing. Having a nonprofit arm is unique, and you'll hear why in about 12 minutes. The point here is that there are many, many organizations out there, about 800 in the greater Trenton area, like the Chamber of Commerce, that would benefit from having their name and position in the industry known and understood by a wider audience. And Age Out Angels is included in that. And I'm lucky to have this platform, and I'm happy to help other organizations promote worthy endeavors. Because you never know, someone might be listening who hears about this tonight and says, yeah, I want to join their effort, or I need their help, or I want to start something like what they do in my area. So it's all good, and I'm happy to share the mic with good people doing good things. So let me remind you that we're on every Thursday night from 8 to 9 p.m. with the Age Out Angels Radio Hour, and we have some intelligent, caring people coming up as guests on the show. Next week on June 21st, Fran Gervasi from the Foster and Adoptive Family Services will be here to talk about how we train and provide assistance training for foster parents. She is a wealth of knowledge. On June 28th, Lorraine Wilkerson from the Child Placement Advisory Council. And Lorraine is someone who began social work about 35 years ago, again, with a world of knowledge. July 5th, we're going to take a day off, but we'll be back on July 12th with those wonderful youth that we had on the show 2 or 3 weeks ago. They'll be returning with this time a darker message of suicide prevention leading up to an event that they're hosting on July 21st. On July 19th, very interesting lady, Johanna Greason, will join us. She's a tireless advocate for child welfare, and she works at the University of Pennsylvania. And on July 26th, we'll have Miss Sheila Addison, the director of the Homefront Family Preservation Center. So be sure to tune in every week at 8 p.m. for what we consider to be our unfiltered look at the child welfare system. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what makes this program unique. If you care about our nation's youth, if you care about the child welfare system, this is where you come to hear the truth. We confront real problems and we search for real solutions. It's our hope that together, you and I, we can arrive at best practices that can be applied where you live. Together, we can make the plight of children a little less traumatic and strive for more positive outcomes. Now, if you have specific questions, you can call in tonight. My guest is live in the studio and the lines are open. You can also write them to me in the comments field on my Facebook page, or email directly to me at greg@ageoutangels.org. I answer every single question personally, because if you care enough to correspond with me directly, I care enough to respond accordingly to you. So you can call in tonight. The number is 609-807-2492. Again, that number is 609-807-2492. And now please take a moment to hit that share button on Facebook. These are issues that deserve attention, and you can't get this info anywhere else. So please give everyone you know a chance to hear this program. And look us up online at www.ageoutangels.org. And while you're hitting that share button, let me remind you that our theme music comes to us courtesy of Kurt Seldemeridge, owner-operator of The Cave rehearsal recording space in Pennsylvania. And a special thanks to Marty Light for playing sweet, sweet bass guitar on that track. Let's get to some news. Interesting new study funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The study is called Defining and Achieving Permanency Among Older Youth in Foster Care, and it addresses, as you might imagine, the issue of permanency, which is considered to be a key child welfare system goal, permanency. And one of the questions was, how do older youth in foster care define their personal permanency goals? And surveys were conducted with 97 youth between the ages of 14 and 20 who are currently in care. Now, over 3/4 of the people who were surveyed, so out of 97, we're talking about more than 75 of the 97, had an idea in their mind of what they would look for in a relational permanency goal. However, only 6.7% had actually achieved their goal. So out of over 75, 7 had actually achieved that goal of permanency. And what did they want most? Not necessarily to be adopted, but what they wanted most was just simply a sense of family belonging. You heard me say the name Johanna Greason a little while ago. She's going to be a guest on the show in a few weeks, and she's a PhD activist for child welfare. She wrote a fabulous tweet this week, echoing the sentiment of a New York Times article about the news you've been seeing all week about the children of persons attempting to enter the United States illegally, who are being detained in some of the most bizarre cage-like circumstances. And Dr. Greason wrote, "We have weaponized the callous traumatization of children in the name of promised immigration reform." Now, this is from an opinion piece in the Times, and one of the people in the opinion section wrote, "Children have become acceptable collateral damage in a policy war." Powerful tweets and important things to think about. Great articles this week from the Chronicle of Social Change. First, a brief report called Early Takeaways from a 50-state look at extended foster care. It's almost impossible for me to believe that all states don't have extended foster care. And by extended foster care, of course, I mean over 18, children allowed to be in the system between 18 and 21. I noticed that Kurt, Dave, Michael, Mickey, does that say? Home watching. I need bigger cue cards, ladies and gentlemen. But we do thank you so much for listening. So we're talking about states who have extended foster care beyond the age of 18. This is the website now that the Juvenile Law Center, with the support of the Ann E. Casey Foundation, has built an excellent new resource for the field in its National Extended Foster Care Review, which is a website that breaks down each state's foster care guarantees after the age of 18. Just because they say you can stay in foster care after 18 doesn't guarantee that every service is the same in every state. So this is very important information if you're working with youth, or if you happen to be a youth who's about to age out of the system. The bill was born of research that put numbers into what most parents already know through experience, that even teens with all the advantages in life are not ready to become fully independent adults at age 18. For foster youth, the outcomes for those aging out at 18 are grim, with high rates of homelessness, incarceration, and unemployment. Now, the review found that 45 states currently offer at least some form of extended foster care to youth who opt to remain in the system as they move to adulthood. The only remaining states without any foster care guarantees after 18 are Delaware, New Mexico, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Rhode Island. A national survey finds expanding the number of college programs for foster youth. This is good news. The number of college assistance programs for current and former foster youth is growing, but there are still major gaps in helping students access them, according to a national survey of state-run colleges. The number of programs serving students in higher education has expanded in recent years, according to the report. About half of the 50 states now have some form of college-based programs. Nearly half of all states provide tuition waivers or vouchers aimed at helping former foster youth pursue higher education, but those who cannot obtain full waivers can face big future costs. And here's where all these systems always fall apart, because they all have cracks. And if you happen to be someone who falls through the cracks, Michelle Walls is an interesting example of that. Michelle is the president of the Michigan chapter of the National Foster Youth Institute, and she was adopted out of foster care at age 13. 13 is a critical age in many, many states. If you were adopted before you turned 13, you can't get a lot of services when you're older. And if you were in foster care a day after your 13th birthday, then you can get a whole lot of services that, and it's just insane that you could take someone who was in foster care at 12 and a half and not let them have services when they're older. And so she was adopted out of foster care at age 13, was not eligible for many scholarships and assistance in Michigan, which limits eligibility to those youth in foster care at age 14 or older. And she's hoping, in her position as president of the Michigan chapter of the National Foster Youth Institute, that she can help change that for youth in care. In terms of on-campus support services, the appropriate identification of foster youth also continues to be an issue for many colleges. It's a strange kind of privacy issue that has to somehow be overcome in order to help a foster youth, especially one who has aged out of the system. Because, and we've had this discussion on the show before, the bottom line is it's none of your business that someone was in foster care. And so if they don't come and self-identify, basically, which takes a whole lot of courage, because they've been sort of put down their whole lives for being part of the foster care system, then no one knows who they are. In particular, the way some colleges understand confidentiality restrictions for the federal financial aid form may be limiting outreach to some foster youth. The federal financial aid form is called the FAFSA, and that is something that is very easy to fill out if you were a foster youth, and people just don't know it. According to the report, these privacy concerns limits confidential outreach by campus-based programs to foster care alumni. Something really wonderful happened this week. Those of you who are regular listeners of this program know how much disdain I have for the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma in particular, which is their company. And the reason that I loathe them so is because they made $14 billion. And I was actually looking at a report that said 36 billion, so I guess the number's up. Basically lying to the public and to doctors, lying especially to prescribing physicians in saying that their drug OxyContin was not habit forming, and they are the reason. They are actually the cause of the epidemic right now. It's not fentanyl. It's the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma, and they've taken that $14 billion and used it in philanthropy around the world. There's like Sackler buildings in places in Washington and London, and they're so very popular among the upper crust. And Massachusetts is suing them, and they've been sued before. They've been sued and admitted to lying and misrepresenting. I believe lying was actually the term. And Massachusetts is now the latest to jump in there and file a lawsuit against Purdue Pharma. Now, I wasn't able to find out before the show exactly how much damages they're seeking. I'm hoping that it'll get into the billions. The last time they were hit for about 500 million, I think, which is not enough. We need billions to solve the opioid epidemic. So with that happy thought in mind, let's take a break right now for 1 minute. And when we come back, you'll meet my guest, Adrian Rubin. Hit that share button on Facebook, please, ladies and gentlemen. Back in a minute. Are back. My guest tonight is Adrian Rubin. In the interest of full disclosure, I feel it's only for this almost never happens that I actually know a guest before they appear on this show. But this is interesting because for a long time, about every 6 months to 1 year, someone introduces me to Adrian Rubin, and it's uncanny how unbeknownst to each other, we have similar interests, and so we end up sort of blazing the same trail. I spent many years involved in scouting. Adrian has spent many years involved with scouting. I'm involved in nonprofit musical events that benefit nonprofit organizations. Adrian is also involved in nonprofit musical events that benefit. So over the years, we've just sort of kept bumping into each other. And when I suggested to the vice president of the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce, a nice lady named Alice Barfield, that they come on the show to let their nonprofit initiative serve as a model for other places around the country, Alice suggested the most perfect person in the world to be on the show and talk about this. And she said, there's this wonderful lady named Adrian Rubin. And I said, here we go again. we're back in business, Adrian. So Adrian and I are reunited in yet a third endeavor. So Adrian Rubin, welcome to the Age Out Angels Radio Hour.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So, all right, so let's get down to business here. Tell me how long you've actually been with the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce.
Well, I've worked with the Chamber in a variety of roles over about the last 10 to 11 years.
And in case people don't really know what a Chamber of Commerce is, can you sort of give us a bit of an overview?
Sure. So a Chamber of Commerce is an organization, often a nonprofit, that brings together business leaders from the local community. The point of a chamber is to give people an opportunity to network with one another, to learn from one another, and to have opportunities to share who they are and what they do. Our chamber has a lot of nonprofits involved as well. We have about 1,400 members, and over 200 of those are nonprofit organizations.
And so right now everybody's wondering, what exactly does this have to do with child welfare?
I think they might be wondering
all
that.
All of our listeners, but that's okay. Stay with us, okay?
We'll get there.
Don't go away. We'll get there indeed. So for a number of years at the chamber, you were basically what I am, which is like a member. Mm-hmm. I'm a member of the chamber. And then things sort of changed about a year or so ago, right?
Yeah, so about two and a half years ago, the president of the Regional Chamber of Commerce, Peter Crowley, approached me and said, we've been wanting to do more with nonprofits for a long time, and would you be willing to head up this initiative? We talked for a long time because there are a lot of different organizations out there that serve nonprofits. There's Women in Development, there's the Association of Fundraising Professionals, there's the Center for Nonprofits. They're all really good organizations that run various programs and opportunities for nonprofits, and we didn't want to replicate what they were already doing. So we spent some time thinking about it, and what we noticed was missing was helping nonprofits work with businesses and helping businesses learn how to work better with nonprofits. And so we created the Nonprofit Business Partnership, and we have a partner organization called the Princeton Regional Arts and Business Alliance. And we also created an umbrella with those two called the Central New Jersey Nonprofit Council. And that's to make sure that we're addressing all of the needs of the different types of nonprofits in the area, the different types of arts organizations, and how they can interact with the local business community.
Now, you got to be thinking about this right now if you're listening, wherever you're listening from, because there's probably a Chamber of Commerce in your area. I mean, if there's business and industry, there's probably a Chamber of Commerce. And it seems like there's no absolute set rule of thumb how they have to conduct themselves, which means there's a little bit of flexibility, and you would be solving a huge problem for nonprofits if you were to go to your local Chamber of Commerce and suggest that they do something like this. I think I've never heard this before, and I think it's very forward thinking.
It's a little different because usually when a Chamber of Commerce or any organization starts thinking about what to do to support the nonprofit community, because let's be real, everybody likes to support nonprofits. We want to have vibrant communities. We want to take care of those in our communities who need help, whether they're people or animals or the environment. There are a lot of organizations out there doing good work. But they do sometimes have a hard time figuring out how to partner with local businesses, how to do more than just ask for a check. So one thing that would be really useful in your local community would be to go and talk to your local Chamber of Commerce, find out what they're doing, and find out if there's something that you, as a leader of a nonprofit, whether you're on a staff or a board or you're someone who has just volunteered for them, could help change in that local Chamber of Commerce. Because they do want to support everyone in their community, and nonprofits are businesses too.
And I'll tell you what you're accomplishing as a secondary gain, I think, from all this. Nonprofits are notoriously poor at communicating with each other.
That's true.
Not just with the for-profit business sector. And it drives me crazy. I mean, it really does. And I'm not sure why it is, because we all have problems that we see in the community, and we're trying to solve those problems, which essentially means we're trying to put ourselves out of business.
Exactly.
Right?
If you enact your mission,
yeah.
if your mission actually comes to fulfillment, you will no longer have a need to exist. And wouldn't that be a wonderful world if we no longer needed all these organizations to do this work because the work was done? Unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon, but it's a wonderful thing to think about.
But I'm not getting younger, so I need to solve this problem, you see? So the whole point about talking to nonprofits in a group is to put them together, which is sort of what you're doing. And I noticed that Cheryl's listening in Canada. Canada also has a problem with child welfare. Dennis, Beth, Kayla, and Tony P are out there listening. I thank you so much for listening, guys, and I hope you're hitting the share button if you're listening through Facebook. Okay. But let's get back to Adrian. So now when you do this, you put a structure in where you plan events. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to make like 8th grade dances, right?
Well, to some degree. We're very lucky because our Chamber of Commerce has about 120 events a year, and they cover the gamut in terms of types of events. So we have networking breakfasts that have a speaker. We have lunches that have a speaker. We have sort of business after business, cocktail networking hours. We have educationally oriented programs. We have programs to talk about what's going on in real estate in the region. So there's a wide variety. And what we noticed was that there needed to be something that was focused on that partnership between businesses and nonprofits. So we focused in on corporate social responsibility. And corporate social responsibility, for those of you who don't know, is the sense that businesses do have a responsibility to be part of the fabric of their local communities. And they have a unique opportunity to make a difference in their local communities. So corporate social responsibility encompasses things like corporate philanthropy, that, how do they give those dollars away? Nonprofits don't always realize that for corporations, donations to nonprofits are not actually tax deductible in the same way as they are to an individual. For many corporations, those dollars are really marketing dollars. And so as you think about how to partner with corporations, you need to know what are they getting from the money they are investing in your organization. And it is an investment for them. It's not just the warm fuzzies from giving a donation. They need to be able to point to either their owners or their shareholders or their employees what they're doing. So corporate philanthropy is one piece of that. Another piece of corporate social responsibility is employee engagement. Employees, particularly younger employees, want to be a part of companies that are making a difference in their communities. So days of service, days of volunteering, encouragement to be on nonprofit boards, credit for volunteer hours. Some companies actually make donations to nonprofits for the hours that their employees volunteer. So we started thinking about that kind of work and what we could do to bring these organizations together, and we decided corporate social responsibility really was that umbrella.
And so do you plan events then that
Yes.
are sort of around that?
We have one signature event a year that's really designed to focus on one of those areas of corporate social responsibility. So one that we did this past spring was on employee engagement, and really thinking about the different ways that companies could partner with different nonprofits. So one company had the example of doing a Jeans Friday. So if you want to wear jeans on Friday, you put some money in a jar and you get to wear jeans on Friday. And the employees would pick each month a nonprofit that they would partner with to give those dollars to. And what they would also do is make sure the employees knew what that nonprofit was doing. So how they were using the money, what they were going to try to achieve with it. Another example is an organization that brings employees together for an in-house day of service. And they created these wonderful toy boxes, and they painted toy boxes to send to a child welfare organization. And they were doing this project, and in the middle of it, one man went up to the microphone and said, "I don't know about you, but I'm not going to deliver a bunch of empty toy boxes."
Oh, wow.
And the next thing you knew, they went out to Toys R Us, you can tell this was a few months ago, and bought a bunch of toys. So those toy boxes were beautifully painted and filled with toys.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And that was an incredible partnership with that local social service organization. So those are just two examples of how an employee engagement program can connect people to the community. And it can be you can take an employee engagement program and do almost anything with it if you find the right nonprofit partners.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So now,
so that was one program.
When the Chamber of Commerce wants to create events around companies, your outreach must be staggering. How many companies are there?
We have 1,400 businesses that are part of the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce. And so what happens is we will get anywhere from 100 to 500 people at a given event. And so each event has a slightly different focus, a slightly different feel to it. I happen to really love our speaker luncheons. They give me a great opportunity to talk to people. And we also have set up a system whereby nonprofits are each given a free table at the reception area so that they can explain who they are. And we have a room for about 12 to 15 tables, and they're filled now every month, mostly because of the work of this committee I chair. We've reached out to the nonprofits to make sure they understand what this opportunity means to them, how they can benefit from that messaging, that communication, that partnership, as opposed to just walking in and saying, "Hey, will you buy an ad in our program?" Not that that's unimportant. We do need to have money for the services that are provided, but when you talk about what else you could do together, can you find volunteer opportunities? Can you think about what it means to serve on your board? Can you get some advice about your website? What's some of the
Sure.
skills-based volunteering you might need? Those are conversations that can happen if you put yourself out for them.
Absolutely. And when you plan an event, if you need to, to get 5 or 6 for-profit partners, I mean, the kind of outreach that the Princeton Chamber has is sort of, you can go to like Johnson and Johnson and Bristol Myers Squibb, and I'm sure every one of those is a member. I mean, these are heavy hitters.
Yep, they are.
Novo Nordisk, is in this area. We're in a pharma
We are.
belt. We're in a
But I'd actually recommend in most areas that everybody goes for those big companies. And you can actually develop a far better partnership with some of the smaller or mid-sized companies
Local.
because not as many people are going for them. That you do get all the PTOs and the scout groups and, the dance teams who go to the local businesses. But there are plenty of local businesses that are looking for that right opportunity. And again, it goes back to that word partnership. They want more than just to be asked for a check.
And we're going to talk about that in just a moment because it really can get in depth. But we need to take a break for just 1 minute. While we're doing that, hit that share button on Facebook. When we come back, you're going to learn some interesting things about what that relationship is. Back in a minute. And we are back with Adrian Rubin. Before we go further, I do need to thank all the people who made donations to Age Out Angels this week. We thank you so very much for your generosity. And if you happen to have an employee giving fund or a matching gifts foundation associated with your place of work, we would certainly appreciate your contacting us and telling us how we can participate in that. You could private message me on Facebook or email to me at greg@ageoutangels.org. And I want to remind everyone that you can donate to Age Out Angels every time you make a purchase from Amazon. And I'm thinking about all those Father's Day gifts that are going to go down this weekend, especially the ones that'll be coming to me. And all you have to do is designate Age Out Angels to be your Amazon Smile designee, and a portion of your payment will go to Age Out Angels without it costing you 1 penny more, not a penny. And I can make it easy for you to designate Age Out Angels as your Amazon Smile recipient. All you have to do is contact me either via Facebook or directly at greg@ageoutangels.org, and I can send you a link that will take you directly to our designation. Back now with Adrian Rubin. Now, there is a large problem, and it occurs on 2 fronts, and we sort of touched on it a minute ago. First, nonprofits need to have a much more coordinated effort. The biggest obstacle to nonprofit effectiveness is fragmentation. Nobody's taking the lead. And that fragmentation exists among nonprofit, and it also exists in the nonprofit relationship with the for-profit companies. And you seem to have zeroed in on the reasons for for-profit companies to want to connect to nonprofits. So this goes way beyond the whole walking into a for-profit company with your dog and pony show, and telling them how valuable you are in the community and how everyone's going to go to hell if they don't write you a check. This has everything in the world to do with relationships.
That's right.
And I think that really is directly in line with the mandate of the chamber in the first place.
That's exactly right.
Right?
And what the chamber is able to do is to facilitate the creation of these relationships. So as a nonprofit member of your local chamber of commerce, you have an opportunity to meet lots of business owners, lots of business leaders, human resources professionals, vendors, restaurants, you name it. They are members of your local chamber of commerce, and they want to support and do business with other members of the local chamber of commerce. In Princeton, one of the things that we do very successfully is provide those networking opportunities. I talked a little bit about the tables we make available for free for our nonprofit members. those are really good opportunity, an important opportunity for our nonprofits, because they can bring several of their staff members. They don't have to pay to come into the lunch unless they want to, and some of them do and some of them don't. But they can have 2, 3, 4 people at their table developing relationships with people who are there. Now, you don't meet someone and say, "Hi, Greg, would you like to write me a check?" That's not networking. Networking is, how can you help that other person? What can you do for them? Businesses are there to see how they can help each other. Nonprofits should be there to see how they can help those businesses. And that's a little different from how most nonprofits approach networking.
Absolutely. And I have to say that I participated in one of those events. It was the luncheon event where nonprofits were allowed to have their tables. And they were very nice. I couldn't do the luncheon. I'm doing Weight Watchers. I can't
They do have salad.
I can't be anywhere near a buffet. It doesn't matter. But they were very, very nice to me. But the point is, and I want to say hi to Jerry and hi to George who are listening. Hit that share button on Facebook, guys. The point is that after I did that, I was there by myself. And after I did that, I went to an orientation meeting with the chamber, and they said, no, don't come by yourself.
Right.
Bring other people, and don't make everyone just hang at your table. You have a couple of people at your table, but you also send a few other people out into the crowd.
Right.
And
that's a way for people to meet. And once you meet someone, the key is, how do you follow up? And you're not following up to ask for a gift at that moment in time, or ask for them to do something for you. It's, what can you do for them? If you meet someone from an accounting firm, the goal is not, can I get one of your staff members to be the treasurer for our board because we're looking for a new treasurer? First of all, a lot of people who work in accounting can't be the treasurer of a board for conflict of interest reasons, but also they deal with numbers all day. They don't always want to be the treasurer of the board.
They'd rather coach the
They'd
Little
rather
League
do
team.
something else, They'd rather do the marketing or something. But the opportunity is for that employee to do something meaningful. So you let the business owner know what you have to offer to help their employees feel great about the community. That's good for the business owner. That's good for you. And it starts from having a relationship and getting to know one another.
And it was absolutely fantastic. I got to tell you, I'm standing there at this table, and the next thing I know, there a couple of mayors, happened to walk by and they struck up a conversation with me, and it was great. And then I met a lady from a bank, and we started talking about how foster youth have really no experience managing money. One of their, biggest problems when they age out is that they have no idea. They've never even had a bank account, And so we started just chatting there about, could we put a program together that would be sort of like maybe a paid summer internship, and could children learn the banking industry, because the only thing they know about the banking industry, if they know anything at all, it's being a teller. That's it. That's their whole extent. And there's a whole industry, in banking. And we're having this whole conversation is the point. And it just grew out of that event,
right?
That you guys put together, which in my mind, I just, I make a joke that it's an 8th grade dance, and that there's going to be the boys on one side and the girls on the other, and boy, to get them to come together is a big deal, but it's really not, because we're all adults, and there's a certain amount of curiosity.
It's important to remember that most people are uncomfortable with networking. So it's not just being a nonprofit professional or a nonprofit volunteer and feeling a little awkward, sort of the 8th grade dance analogy. That's actually a really good analogy. But lots of people are uncomfortable with going up to someone they don't know and shaking that person's hand and saying, "Hi, I'm Adrienne Rubin. I'm the director of advanced events at the Lawrenceville School, and I do volunteer work with the chamber. What are you here representing?"
Yeah.
It's hard for people to do that. The more you do it, the better you become at it. And as a nonprofit leader, it's very important for you to get the message out about what you're doing. As a board member, one of your biggest jobs is to be an advocate and a spokesman for your organization. The only way to do that is to keep getting out there and saying who you are and what you do and why it's important. For example, I'm on the board of Send Hunger Packing Princeton. We send food home on the weekend for kids who are food insecure. And it's a wonderful program that I love participating in.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
So, but I have to mention that because it's really important to me. And the more you do it, the better you become at it.
Absolutely. And so there's this a sweet little give and take here. I mean, because as nonprofits, we're used to making the pitch, right? We're used to making the pitch, but it seems like if you develop a relationship with a for-profit and maybe take the time to listen, right? Then they may have some ideas of their own.
That's right.
You know, of how they'd like to engage with you. And I guess some of that may depend on things that they know that you can't know, like, you know, what their employee mix is.
Right. What's important to their employees? What are their philanthropic priorities? Our next program is going to focus on corporate philanthropy so that we can help companies think about that a little more strategically, as opposed to just saying, okay, well, we have this amount of dollars and by March we've given them all away. How do we think about how we want to give them away? What types of organizations do we want to work with? What types of partnerships do we want to create?
What are some examples of what, you know, how a company may come to a nonprofit and say, this is...
Well, it usually comes from a relationship. And quite frankly, a relationship between that nonprofit and an employee. So an employee who is serving on a board, for example. I keep mentioning board service. It's a very, very important thing for people to do. And it's an important way for business leaders to be engaged in the community. So a nonprofit may have established a relationship, and then the company could say, well, you know, next year we would really like to be more involved with the Save Animal Shelter, Save a Friend to Homeless Animals, which happens to be where we adopted our cats, and we've volunteered there for years. We love this organization. And so I do some work with the McLean Insurance Agency in Princeton, and we talked, and I said, this is a really good organization. And they said, well, you know, we haven't supported an animal shelter in a little while. We really like Save too. We'd like to sponsor their gala this year. And so that came into the philanthropic priorities of the organization because we established a relationship. And that it all comes back to people give to people. Companies are made up of people. Nonprofits are made up of people. So you have to get the people together. And that's what a Chamber of Commerce can do so effectively.
It's absolutely amazing what you're doing here. But you seem to be doing this in a lot of places, and I'm saying that because I thought I knew about all the places where I could find you. But now is this, you know, community nonprofit? Is this something that's always been a part of your life? Let's get personal here for a second.
It has been. I mean, I've been involved in community development since I was a kid. I always learned to volunteer, and I volunteered through college. I actually, at Princeton, ran something called the Community Service Fund Drive, which helped raise money for our Student Volunteers Council at Princeton University. And then when I left Princeton, I started volunteering, and I helped found the Snowden Princeton program in Massachusetts, which is the oldest mentoring program in a public school run by an alumni organization. And then came back to work at the university, and I was in our alumni council office for 14 years. And it was after that that I started working with smaller nonprofits, and now I'm back to a slightly larger one at the Lawrenceville School.
Along with 8 or 10 other organizations,
Yes.
it sounds like, right?
Yes.
I believe you were doing something scouting when we were talking the other night, right?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
And so now you're taking this sense of civic responsibility and sending it through, it would appear, to the next generation in the form of your young man.
That's true, I am. I'm very lucky to have a young man who is an Eagle Scout, became an Eagle Scout at age 15, which is relatively young. And he's very engaged in service. He's volunteered at SAVE. He has worked on a variety of different projects. He volunteers every summer at Cub Scout camp, which I think is his favorite thing to do all summer. So.
It was always mine. I mean, as an adult. But and the point being, of course, that we talk about bad things here all the time that happen in families, you know, and the way those bad things tend to transcend generations. Right? Generation to generation, bad things, abuse, neglect are all things, you know, that happen here. And what you're showing us here is that it's not always the bad things that go from generation to generation. It can also be the positive, civic responsible
Absolutely.
things that go from generation to generation. And then if he teaches it to his children, at some point down the road, it becomes a very beautiful thing. Now, if I understand correctly, he has a presentation that he does which has a unique take on bullying.
That's right. He has a presentation on coping with bullying, which he has presented at the New Jersey State GSA Forum twice. And he's also done for Contact of Mercer County. It's focused on how to help kids deal with bullying. We have lots of different ways that people try to stop bullying, and that's important. But it's also important to figure out, how do you deal with somebody being mean? Because sometimes it's not even bullying, it's just somebody being mean, and kids can be mean.
It's a very interesting take. I mean, because we're so enamored right now with just making it end, period.
Right.
And I'm sure there are a lot of steps on the way to getting there, and I hope we do. But meanwhile, he's trying to deal with a situation of the reality.
Exactly.
Of that situation. And I think maybe we're going to convince him to come on the show.
I think he'd be willing to,
and,
yes.
And talk about that at some point.
I think so.
I think that'd be wonderful. So with regard to the relationship with the nonprofits and the for-profits in the Chamber of Commerce, this has been going on now for a year and a half, right?
Right, about a year and a half.
Okay. So tell the people out there how they can expect something like this to grow. Did it instantly become a huge hit? Is it a process?
It's certainly a process. We first had to think it all through and see what our focus would be. Now, just like any other new initiative. So we thought about it, then we pulled together the nonprofit leaders that we thought would be best to help make it happen. And we asked for their thoughts and their opinions and their ideas. We had a meeting a couple of days ago, and we were trying to figure out what we should do for our next event. And one of the members of the committee said, I have an idea, and I think we should focus on corporate philanthropy. And we listened to his idea and said, yeah, that's a good idea. Part of any initiative being successful is for the people in charge, the people leading, to know that they don't have all the answers. And that's probably important for nonprofits to remember, too, is that we don't have all the answers, and we have to work with other people to accomplish more.
We can be so smug.
Yes.
It's true.
Well, and if we partner with other nonprofits, it's not just partnering with businesses. We as nonprofits aren't always so good at playing in the sandbox with each other. Mm-hmm. And we think, there's a limited amount of money, there are a limited amount of resources. And that is true to some degree, but there are plenty of people who donate to many, many different organizations.
Yeah.
And I believe that there's enough room for all of us if we work together.
And there's no shortage of children who need help.
That's exactly right.
Now. That's absolutely positively true. So was it easy for you to, or was it required of you to convince nonprofits to sort of embrace this style of networking and building relationships?
That's a good question. It wasn't hard. It was more important for them to understand that the opportunities really were available to them. I think it's easy to get so caught up in the frenzy of everything that has to be done, and these missions feel so heavy at times.
Right.
You're trying to help. You're at Homefront and you're trying to make sure that this child that you just met has a place to go that night. Or you're at Arm in Arm and you're trying to make sure that this family has enough food to eat for the weekend. These are, or you're trying to make sure that this little cat that got dropped off on somebody's doorstep actually can get inside and not freeze overnight on a winter night. Mm-hmm. These are hard things to be dealing with every day. And as nonprofit professionals, we're often just so focused on that it's hard to take a step back and just say, I need to talk to people.
Yeah.
I need to share who I am, why I'm doing this, how it's going, and give them an opportunity to make some suggestions and to be there for us in a different way, perhaps, than we've already said.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what's our takeaway from this tonight? I'm assuming, first of all, that all of the for-profits and the nonprofits are within what they would call the Princeton regional
Yes, although
geographic.
we do have divisions or almost subsidiaries of national nonprofits. So the American Red Cross and the American Cancer Society and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, they're all part of the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce. They're local offices or
Right.
local
United
representatives.
Way. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. United Way, actually, the CEO of the United Way is on our committee, and they're a wonderful member of our committee. So, yes, they are mostly local nonprofits. Every chamber of commerce, though, should have the opportunity for local nonprofits to join. So, if you are in an area where you have not gotten involved with your local chamber of commerce, please go and talk to your local
Yeah.
chamber of commerce. Tell them about this program and see if they would be open to doing something like it. You're welcome to contact me through Greg. I'd be happy to tell you a little bit more about what we do and give you some suggestions, because I really believe there are opportunities here that are untapped in many areas across the country and beyond.
And to set up an infrastructure from scratch, would take you years. If
Right.
you can partner with an organization like the Princeton Chamber of Commerce or the Chamber of Commerce in your area, what you'll have is a built-in network that you can't build probably
That's exactly right.
yourself.
And you will help the Chamber of
Yeah,
Commerce too. Remember that, again, it's not just what you get, it's what you give, right?
absolutely.
And when a nonprofit joins a Chamber of Commerce, they bring a vibrancy, they bring a commitment, they bring a dedication that will be beneficial to every person who's a part of that chamber.
Adrian Rubin, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope now that we're doing this, we'll get to spend a little more time together
Me
at the
too.
Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're going to take a short break right now, and I'll be back with some final words. Hit that share button on Facebook. And we are back. Adrian Rubin from the Princeton Regional Chamber of Commerce. Absolutely fantastic. Good advice for all nonprofits out there. From KSFY, which is the ABC affiliate in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, comes a story from a town called White Lake, South Dakota, where a family that was separated for more than 50 years finally met on Friday. Thanks to the power of social media, Tammy Myers said she and her older sister, who lived in Richmond, Indiana, tried to find their siblings a few years ago, but were unsuccessful. The adoption agency didn't want to tell them anything. These are 50-year-old people, right? The adoption agency didn't want to tell us anything because the thing was sealed. So it was kind of hard, Myers said. In White Lake, South Dakota, little did they know, Joe Clayton and his twin sister, Laura Shields, were trying to do the same thing. It was probably about 8 years old, I'd say. My parents told us they weren't our biological parents, Joe Clayton said. They were always 100% behind us trying to find our parents or our siblings. Clayton said his parents told them they had siblings. They just were unsure of how many, where they lived, and whether they were brothers or sisters. The family spent years wondering if their siblings were still alive or if they even wanted to meet. And, people find that a lot of the times, like an adopted child will become older and look for their biological parent. Almost always the biological mother. You can never find the biological father, but they look for the biological mother, and the biological mother says, no, I don't want to meet this person, and it like hurts them a second time. But that's not what happened here, because it turns out that each one of them has 3 brothers and sisters. But that's not all. They have more siblings back in Indiana, 12 altogether. The Indiana siblings have already met. The Claytons and Shields are planning to visit and meet everyone else for the first time in September. The family said they hope their reunion can inspire others who are adopted to never give up hope if they want to search for their family. It's a miracle Facebook can do this stuff, Joe Clayton said. They actually had spent years, and then like overnight, to the magic of Facebook, things happened. Tricia Brooks is a senior fellow at the Center for Children and Families at Georgetown University, and she reports about a possible repair in the interpretation of the Affordable Care Act that may allow more former foster youth to have Medicaid up to age 26. Now, understand that in the Affordable Care Act, one of the things that was never considered horrible about it, even by people who hated the Affordable Care Act, was the fact that children with parents can stay on their parents' health care until the age of 26. You never heard a negative word about that. Now, of course, what's missing in the lives of foster youths is the parents, and a freak interpretation of the difference between the words and the in the law led to foster youths being kicked out of Medicare if they changed states. Now, we live in the Trenton area, which is right on the border between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. If you live in a border state, you're constantly going back and forth, across the border. And believe me, if a child can find a place to sleep, they're going to do it in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and they're not going to be worried about their Medicare at that moment. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make this correction in the form of a clarification, all right? And they're trying to piggyback it onto an opioid bill. And so far, this has made it out of committee, and a House vote looks promising. However, we are not out of the woods yet because there is no plan for it to be brought to the floor of the Senate as of now. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that and hope for the best. But I find it all the time. Can't you get insurance? No. Why? Because I changed states, and now I don't qualify. What about your meds? Can't help it. Nothing can be done. Finally tonight, I wanted to revisit something that we started talking about last week but didn't really have a chance to finish, which is the foster care to prison pipeline and how it works. And last week I mentioned a Bronx native by the name of Randy who entered into foster care when he was 10. He had 13 placements and in three boroughs of New York City during his time in the system. When he was 14, he got into a fight and the police were called. And none of the boys was seriously injured, but Randy was incarcerated for 14 months in juvenile detention. Fast forward to when Randy is 17, and he got into a fight again, and police were called. And this time, he was given 18 months on Rikers Island, which is an adult prison in the New York City area. And by the way, New York is changing its law so that by 2019, 16 and 17-year-olds won't be able to be incarcerated with adults. But that didn't do much good for Randy, did it? So here he is for over a year on Rikers. And what we're finding is that the reason for this is actually several-fold. I mean, police get called on foster kids and homeless kids faster than they get called on children who are not in that situation. And sometimes, like, if a child gets into an altercation in school, the school doesn't know who the parents are. All the school knows is that there's always somebody different here picking up this kid. They don't know who to call. They just don't know. And it's easier for them to call the police. Also, you'll find that in group home type settings, the people who are working, the staff in the group home, are not necessarily trained. They might be people with, like, high school equivalencies or something like that. They don't have training to deal with youth. And remember, we're talking about youth who have suffered serious trauma. That's why they're in the system in the first place. They don't react to things the same way, that those of us who have grown up in relative privilege react to things. So what happens here, and then, add to that the racial numbers that show that more black youths are in foster care than white youths, and what you have is like this sort of perfect storm of people who get stuck in the criminal justice system. Certain populations within foster youth are disproportionately at risk for criminalization. Black children are around twice as likely to be placed in foster care as white kids. Because black kids are already subject to disproportionate rates of school discipline and criminalization, and being a foster youth compounds this risk. Foster youth, particularly girls, are targeted by sex traffickers, and the criminalization of sex work can funnel these victims of modern-day slavery into the criminal justice system. Another major driver of the foster care to prison pipeline is the criminalization of mental illness. And this is just a disgrace, what we've done in this country, not only with children, but with adults as well. Foster children often have serious trauma and mental illness, and some advocates believe they are routinely overprescribed psychotropic medications and underserved with the therapy and trauma-informed care that they need to heal. NPR reported, pardon me, that according to a U.S. Government Accountability Office analysis, foster youth are up to 4 times as likely to be prescribed antipsychotic drugs as other minors, and that hundreds of children are on 5 or more psychotropic medications at once, something not supported by any medical evidence. Foster youth can be locked up for going through a mental health crisis. California resident by the name of Ariana, 23-year-old, told this to Teen Vogue, that she went to juvenile hall 4 times, twice for fighting and twice for mental health crisis. I had to stay there for like 3 weeks, and it was terrifying, Ariana says, about the first time she was incarcerated for a mental health crisis. The lady told me that if I didn't calm down, she would have to restrain me. Advocates support a number of solutions to combat the foster care to prison pipeline. And if you'll stay with me for one more week, we'll talk about what those solutions should be next week. But meanwhile, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another hour talking about youth who should matter more in our political and economic discourse. And tonight we took a nice little left turn with Adrian Rubin as we talked about how nonprofits can become more successful and more effective in helping the youth in our area. So we're grateful to you, Ms. Rubin, for being our guest tonight. Join me next Thursday, June 21st at 8 p.m. when my guest in the studio will be the amazing Fran Gervasi from the Foster and Adoptive Family Services. So until then, let's make this week the best week ever. Good night.